Hi, it's Stephen Shalowitz here from the One Way Ticket Show. I'm excited to announce our new YouTube channel where we're featuring some of our classic episodes and releasing new ones as well. Do subscribe to the channel and make sure you ring that bell below so you never miss an episode. From New York City, I'm Stephen Shalowitz, and this is the One Way Ticket Show. Hello and welcome once again to another episode of the show where we explore with our guests where they'd go if given a one-way ticket, no coming back. Their destinations may be in the past, present, future, real imaginary, or even a state of mind, but once again, the only caveat, there's no coming back. Now, you can listen to all episodes on our website, theonewayticketshow.com, or search for theonewayticketshow.com wherever you like to download your podcasts. And while you're at it, do subscribe, rate, and review us to make it easier for more people around the world to find us. All right, as we go to air, I've been doing the show now for more than 8.5 years, and one of the best things about it are the friendships I've made with my guests. And our featured guest today is absolutely no exception. He's Prince Dimitri of Yugoslavia, who we featured on the program way back on episode 102. That was a long time ago. Now, a much sought-after bespoke jeweler, Prince Dimitri is related to each of the 11 reigning royal families in Europe. He's the son of Prince Alexander of Yugoslavia and Princess Maria Pia of Savoy, and the grandson of King Umberto II and Queen Maria José, the last rulers of Italy. And just a few weeks ago, on my birthday, in fact, September 8th, which was a total coincidence, he released his stunning new book, Once Upon a Diamond, published by Rizzoli, which recounts the history of his royal lineage through the language of the extraordinary jewelry designed for and collected by his family, which includes royalty from Italy, Greece, Belgium, Russia, and Yugoslavia. And here to briefly revisit his one-way ticket destination and to delve into the world of royal jewels, Prince Dimitri joins us now on the line from his apartment across town here in New York City. Dimitri, lovely to have you back on the program.
Good morning, Stephen. Great to hear you again.
Oh, you as well. We're socially distancing. The last time you were on the show, you very graciously invited me into your apartment. But of course, being these unprecedented times, of course, we have to do this a little bit far away from one another. But nevertheless, we're going to get it done and get down to business. And really, I first have to congratulate you on the book, which really was so stunning to go through. So we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. But first, I just want to really revisit just very briefly your one-way ticket destination, which was to heaven. So is that still your one-way ticket destination of choice, Dimitri?
Yes, and it will always be. There's no better place than heaven.
I absolutely couldn't agree with you more. And has your sense of heaven changed as a result of the times that we're living in right now?
No. Heaven is a place where everything is perfect, where you experience eternal bliss. And, as you evolve, I think, so does heaven. It will be what corresponds you.
And I'm guessing your sense of hell has maybe changed as a result of the coronavirus?
There's more. I think it has confirmed what I already thought.
Well, that's going to be for another episode. How's that?
Yeah.
But you've stayed well during this period. I know you've done your walks and you've photographed, and so you've maintained your sense of creativity and your sanity as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I decided that it was that I was in a monastery and I was doing a spiritual retreat for 3 or 4 months, and that every day was going to be the same. So every day I did my meditation in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, and at night also. I lived for 24 hours at a time, like one does in a monastery. And it really, really helped me put things into question, get rid of a lot of, bad things from the past, whether it's physical things, when you clean the apartment, or letting go of, things that can disturb, that we, the excess baggage that we can carry psychologically.
And so you really utilize the time in a proper way, and you didn't waste it.
Exactly, but you have to.
I agree.
I mean, there is only the present, as as Eckhart Tolle, who I admire a lot, says. There's only the present. It's the only thing that's real. The rest doesn't exist anymore or yet. And so
you use
you
the
have
time.
to always accept. Yeah. You have to accept the present always.
Listen, Dimitri, switching gears here for a moment, I just want to thank, before we dive into your book, I do want to thank Travel Wi-Fi for very proudly sponsoring this episode of the show. They're, of course, the makers of the Tepi. It's a pocket-sized Wi-Fi device you can use in over 130 countries worldwide, so you always have secure Wi-Fi to stay connected wherever you go, even if it's a monastery, or wherever you stay, socially distancing, of course. Do check out the Tepi and all their other services at travelwifi.com. And if you use the promo code One Way Ticket, our friends at Travel Wi-Fi will give you 15% off rentals and purchases of the Tepi, and we'll have a link to Travel Wi-Fi on our homepage and the show notes page of this very episode. So no excuses not to stay in touch with us here on the One Way Ticket Show wherever you go. And with that, Dimitri, we welcome you back to the program. Once again, congratulations on the book. And really, let's dive into it right now. I've gone through it, but for the benefit of our listeners, first share how you structured the book and overall what's featured inside.
So the way I structured the book, thank you very much for having me, is I did 4 chapters that more or less talk about the 4 different sides of my family, which are the Romanovs, the Greek, the Belgian, the Yugoslav, and the Italian royal families. And I go sort of chronologically, and I show all the beautiful jewelry they had, with marvelous photos from Cartier archives and Sotheby's and Christie's archives also. But more importantly, I tell all sorts of stories that nobody knows, because those are family stories, including, the escape from Russia of Grand Duchess Vladimir in harrowing condition. I mean, it's the kind of thing you would only see in a movie.
Right.
Even in a movie, you probably wouldn't believe it. And one of the very interesting stories in the book was told to me by an old lady that I met 20 years ago, and she was in her 90s or something. She was very old, and she was in the train of the Grand Duchess as a little girl, fleeing the revolution as they were pursued by the Bolsheviks. And she told me the whole story of that train trip, and you can read it in the book. It's fascinating.
Right. Do share with our listeners a little about who she was and her important and truly legendary collection of jewels.
So Grand Duchess Vladimir was a German princess. She was the daughter of the reigning Duke of Mecklenburg. Mecklenburg was a little duchy in Germany. We remember Germany before the unification was a mosaic of about, I think, around 100 duchies, principalities, kingdoms, city-states, with hundreds of different passports and currencies. I mean, it was a mess. It was very complicated. It was the Holy Roman Empire before that, and it was unified in the late 19th century by Bismarck. So she was the daughter of the Duke of Mecklenburg. She married Grand Duke Vladimir, who was the brother of Alexander III and the son of Alexander II. And he was the second most important man in Russia after the emperor, which made her the second lady after the Tsarina. And then when her nephew Nicholas II got married, she was the third lady. But in reality, she was, along with the Tsarina, the most important lady in Russia, because the young Tsarina, because of the disease, the hemophilia of the poor Tsarevich, was very recluse and suffered from depression and all that, and was only trying to save the life of her son. We all know the story.
Right.
So Grand Duchess Vladimir became this formidable figure, who was really the center of diplomatic life and artistic life in St. Petersburg. Her husband was the great supporter of the avant-garde movement. He was the major sponsor of the ballet russe, the famous Russian ballet. All of that was thanks to both of them. And of course, she absolutely adored jewelry. And it is said that in her days, the most important collection of jewelry on earth at the time was hers and the Tsarina's.
And you included some of the pieces in the book, and
Yes.
one of which was the Vladimir Tiara. And what should we know about that?
So the Vladimir Tiara was made by Bolin. And Bolin was a Swedish man who was a jeweler, who was actually the court jeweler in St. Petersburg. And it's diamond and pearls. It's sort of diamond arches with pearls dangling in the middle. And it's the epitome of elegance and grace. So much so that when Jacques Cartier at the time saw it for the first time, because she was a very, very important client of Cartier, he asked the Grand Duchess if she would be kind enough to lend him the tiara so he could draw some other jewelry inspired by it. He wasn't going to copy it, but he was going to be inspired. And so she said, yes, of course. I mean, he came to St. Petersburg. He had an exhibition in her palace for a couple of months. With her help, she brought all the courts in St. Petersburg. I mean, she really did a lot of good for Cartier. And he took the tiara, and 6 months later, he had designed an entire line of things, including the closest variation to it, which is the tiara that was then sold to Princess Marie Bonaparte, who became Princess George of Greece. And you will see the photo in the book.
Right.
And if you're familiar for Cartier's work, all that style is really what marked the Edwardian period of Cartier's jewelry. I would say that, along with the Louis XVI French decorative art shapes, you know, the acanthus leaves, the spirals, and all of that.
And now that tiara is in Her Majesty the Queen's collection.
Yes, it belongs to the Queen of England. So as she was able to escape from Russia, she arrived in Venice, penniless, obviously, with nothing apart a few things that she brought on the train with her, and then on the boat on which she escaped, sent by my other great-grandmother, the Queen of Italy. And she ran into a friend of hers who knew she was going to be there, who was somebody from the British Embassy in St. Petersburg that she had become very friendly with. And the first thing he asked is, where is the jewelry? And she said, well, it's all, I don't know, it's all in St. Petersburg somewhere. I mean, and I left it in the palace, and by then it was 2 years ago. And she said, I haven't been back, but there's a vault room between my dressing room and my bathroom, and it was an octagonal room lined in blue velvet with showcases all around it, as my grandmother described it to me because she remembered. So Albert Stopford, as he was called, decided to go back to Russia in the middle of the revolution, disguised as, I don't know, there's different variations of the story. There's the story that he dressed like a workman. There's others where he went with an authorization from the British Embassy, approved by the Soviets, that he could inspect the palace. So he went in, he found the room, and everything was there, everything. So he brought a suitcase with him with a lot of newspapers. So he wrapped everything up in that suitcase and went out. And it took him a few weeks to be able to get back to London like that. But the next day, the Bolsheviks ransacked the palace, destroyed almost everything in it, and found the room empty.
It was a stroke of luck, wasn't it?
It was unbelievable. So he went to London after that. By then, the Grand Duchess was dead already, because she died a few months after the escape. She was ill anyway, and it had such a toll on her health anyway that, you know, she ended up in Contrexéville, which is a spa in France, where she had bought a palace because she liked spas and she went every year. That palace is now the Grand Hotel of Contrexéville, like the water. So Albert Stopford met with my great-grandmother and her 3 brothers. and he gave them all the suitcase with all the jewelry. I mean, he had put it in a vault by then, of course.
Sure.
But when he was able to get in touch with them, it was divided by color. So there were 4 of them. So one got the diamonds, one got the diamonds and pearls, got white. The other one got everything that was blue. The other one, everything that was green. And the other one, everything that was red. And it was more or less the same value for everything, funnily enough. So my great-grandmother got everything that was white. So she got the pearls and the diamonds.
It's not a bad bargain, is it?
No. So she sold the tiara to Queen Mary, and Queen Mary wore it a lot, and she had it adjusted. She had some emeralds that were the same shape, and she had them remounted so that they could hang instead of the pearls when she wanted. So you see the Queen of England today wearing it 3 different ways, with pearls, with diamonds, or with nothing inside, just the arches for a more light, ethereal look. And
so,
it's actually the Queen's favorite tiara.
And so you can take out those gems and you can replace them. How clever.
Yes. Well, that was typical of the jewelry of those days. It was started in the 18th century already in Russia. It was called variable geometry, where a necklace, you could divide it into 2 bracelets. You could take the center part, like a bow, like a diamond bow, for instance, and that would become a bow brooch if you wanted. There's a necklace of Catherine the Great in my book where I show all that.
It's fascinating. Now, you just moving on to some of the other jewels. I mean, I tell you, I think someone needs to make a movie out of the Grand Duchess's life and the jewels.
It's unbelievable. It's the biggest chapter in the book because there's so much to say about her. You'll see
I saw it. It's absolutely it's absolutely remarkable. So much still to talk about her, but just in the interest of time, the Queen of Romania sapphire. That particularly captured my attention since, as I mentioned, I'm born September 8th, and of course, sapphires are the birthstone of September. So every time I see a sapphire, my eyes light up. And my gosh, what a stunning, stunning stone that was.
It's amazing. But that is not, so that one came from Cartier. King Ferdinand bought it for the coronation. But the interesting thing is that Queen Marie of Romania had a sister, Princess Victoria Melita of Great Britain, as they were known. They were the granddaughters of Queen Victoria. And Grand Duchess Victoria and Princess Victoria Melita actually was married to one of the 3 sons of the Grand Duchess Vladimir, Grand Duke Kirill, and she was known as Aunt Ducky in the family. So Aunt Ducky had inherited everything that was blue because Kirill inherited all the blue things. So they sold that fantastic Cartier sapphire tiara, to their sister-in-law, the Queen of Romania, who bought it. Because in the meantime, her jewels had all been stolen because during the war, she sent them to Russia for safekeeping. But in the middle of the war, the revolution happened and they stole all the jewelry that belonged to anybody royal, even if it was a foreign head of state. So she had nothing to wear for the coronation, which was after the war. So she bought the tiara from Grand Duke Kirill, and then King Ferdinand bought that amazing necklace with that sapphire, which was the 3rd biggest sapphire that ever existed, which was 475 carats, I think.
Wow. It's really, really remarkable. Just by the way, and before we move on to some of the other pieces in the book, Dimitri, was there competition amongst the royals to have the most fabulous necklace, to have the most amazing jewels, to have the most stunning collection of tiaras? Was there that competition?
I think probably a little bit, I guess. But the concept of that kind of competition didn't exist as much as it does today, It was part of your uniform. Jewelry was part of the uniform, and you had to wear as much as possible to show, who you were. And it was a symbol of power, looks, also because in those days nobody knew really what the sovereign looked like. It was before photography and all that. So the sovereign, and that was the theory of Catherine the Great, had to be the woman with the most jewels on to be recognizable. And she had to look the part of the job also to inspire respect and a sense of power. So, but it was also an insurance, a form of old age insurance. If something happened, the one thing that you could save always were the jewels.
Well, speaking of Catherine the Great, you featured daisy brooches made from Russian silver and diamonds circa 1780. They were sewn onto Catherine the Great's coronation gown. And Dimitri, when I looked at them, I thought how contemporary they look. They almost look like mid-century pieces. And so I'm wondering if you can just share not only that story, the story behind them, but also just this notion that good design really stands the test of time.
Yes, well, it was made during what was called the Diamond Age in Russia, when their diamond jewelry was superior to anything anywhere else in the world. And it was so beautiful that the French jewelers immediately understood and were inspired by it. So the daisy flowers, actually, there was a few different variations on it. I think there was 4 or 5 of them. And there was, I think, more or less around 200 of them made. And all 200 were sewn on the Empress's dress, who would appear absolutely glittering like that.
Right.
And they were sold by the Soviets in 27 after the revolution, or 24. I can't remember the date now because I have so many dates in my head.
I don't know how you keep track of everybody, all the names, the places, the dates.
Every once in a while, I have to do fact check of what I already know, but I kind of forget.
As Reagan, by the way, speaking of Russia, as Reagan said to Gorbachev, trust but verify.
Exactly. I had to even fact check the birthdays of my own grandparents.
Oh my gosh.
I knew my grandmothers, and one grandfather I wasn't sure anymore, so I had to fact check that. So those were sold at auction. So you see them occasionally coming up for auction here and there. And there was an auction many years ago, maybe 40 or 50 years ago, where some of them were sold. And a friend of mine had 2. And she decided to use them as clips on some velvet evening shoes. And of course, she lost one at the party because she was done much, and one disappeared and was never found.
That seems rather sacrilegious to put pins like that on shoes.
I know, but in all honesty, her collection of jewelry was really one of the most important in existence still today. And I'm not allowed to say her name, of course.
Sure.
But still today, her jewelry is like, it's just mind-boggling.
Now, you also showcased a pair of earrings once owned by Marie Antoinette. And I'd love you to share the story, the journey behind them. And they, by the way, also looked very contemporary.
They did look very contemporary. So those jewels, there was a lot of jewels. Most of the jewels of Marie Antoinette was stolen. There was a famous robbery in the Crown warehouse, if you want, which was in those days. If you look at the Place de la Concorde in Paris, you see 2 gigantic, identical 17th century buildings. The one on the left is the Hôtel de Crillon, which everybody knows. And the identical one on the other side was the warehouse, known as Le Garde-Meuble, where all the furniture and the paintings and the jewelry of different royal palaces were kept and went in and out constantly as the court moved from palaces. And also during the Republic, as they needed to furnish different ministries and embassies and stuff like that. So there was a theft that lasted for, I think, 4 days, where people went in and out. There was a whole gang of people, and they literally emptied the place. And a lot of jewelry resurfaced some 50 or 60 years later, and including those earrings. And at the time, there was an auction or something, and the Prince Yusupov was able to buy them, along with another big pearl that's also in the thing. You'll see it. I tell the whole story with the correct dates in the book.
Yeah, and the Yusupov family was a very prominent family
Yeah.
in St. Petersburg. I remember visiting their palace, and that's where the plot to kill Rasputin was
Yes.
carried out, correct? And I believe he was
Yes.
killed in their palace, in the basement, wasn't he?
He was given poison, I think
Poisoned.
acid or something, which did absolutely nothing to him. Then they shot him, and they sort of put him in a bag and threw him in the river. And he was found the next day on the bank of the river because he had still survived that. He was able to get out of the bag, although he was, shot multiple times, and sort of died on the bank of the river.
It's a remarkable story, truly.
It was a force of nature because he was this terrifying psychic sorcerer, a devil, as when they called him in those days. He was very scary, and they had decided that his influence on the Tsarina was so bad that she interfered with politics and got rid of all the good politicians, and all that. So they decided to kill him, but that was the beginning of the end, of course.
Of course. Now, your dear friend, fashion designer Carolina Herrera, wrote the foreword to the book, and in it she said, quote, "Dimitri has a fantastic eye for the sensuality in jewels." And I do agree with her. And I'm wondering if you can talk about this notion of jewels and gems having a sensual quality and they're just real allure throughout human history.
Yes. Well, first, gems are something fascinating. I mean, gems are the flowers of the mineral kingdom. Let's not forget that. And the same way flowers are fascinating when you look at them for their beauty, so are gems in their own way. So I think it's important the quality of a jewel is very important. It's what makes it sensual and luscious and conveys a sense of luxury and pleasure. And the mix of colors also. And the most important thing for me is movement. Jewels have to move. They have to be flexible. Earrings have to dangle. Necklaces, even if they sit, you have to be able to tell that it's like a piece of fabric that adapts to the body of a woman. And that's what makes the difference between, bad quality and good quality.
Now, I'm so glad that you featured your family and the different branches of your family, because I think that, and dare I say, probably when most people think of royal jewels today, they think of the British crown jewels, and they don't necessarily think about the other royal families and the remarkable gems and jewels that they had. So I think that you really provide perspective on, again, how they dressed and how they lived and what the jewels represented, and just the jewels as art, if nothing else. And in that light, I'd love you to talk a little bit about the Pearl Queen, Margherita of Italy.
So Queen Margherita was the first queen of Italy. And as you know, Margherita means pearl in Latin.
Right.
So she decided that she was going to be the Pearl Queen because she liked pearls anyway, but the fact that she was called like that sort of, I think, helped her. I mean, she had a lot of other things, of course, but her collection of pearls was the most important in Europe at the time.
And we're talking, and just remind our listeners what years we're talking about, Dimitri.
So she became queen in 1861, I think, or 60 or 61, and she was the first queen of Italy. So, and she died in 1927, I think. So we're talking about that age, but she had this fantastic pearl tiara, which is completely, again, with variable geometry. You could remove the pearls, you could put diamond pieces, you could lighten it, you could make it bigger, you can take the centers and turn them into brooches. I mean, it was a whole, engineering feast of it. And it's in the book, and you'll see everybody wearing it, from my grandmother to my great-grandmother to her. And they had amazing jewelry. I mean, all of those royal families had fantastic jewelry, just as good as the ones in England. It's just that in England they kept them, but the other monarchies, most who are in exile, they had to sell all their stuff. And the remaining ones still have them, but a little less, of course, than the Queen of England. But still, I mean, what they have in Holland and in Spain and Sweden also, because in Sweden they had all the jewels of Josephine de Beauharnais, the first wife of Napoleon. And so those three houses are, for me, the three best collections remaining nowadays.
Right. And speaking of Italy, you draw inspiration personally. And before we get into your designs, which are featured in the book, you draw inspiration from the Savoy knot.
Yes. It's called the Knot of True Love. And it comes with the motto, stringe ma non costringe in Italian, which means it binds, but it doesn't constrain you. And it was actually designed in 1345, I think, when my ancestor, who was the Count of Savoy, created a medieval chivalric order called the Order of the Lace of Love. And the Order of the Lace of Love was dedicated to helping widows and orphans, especially victims of the war. And they worked with different monasteries and all that. And the logo was this lace of love, this lovely shape. And they liked it so much that when the County of Savoy became the Duchess of Savoy in the 15th century, the Duke of Savoy then incorporated to the coat of arms of the Savoy family, which it still is today. And I've done a lot of things for them. And I've designed an entire collection for Swarovski, which got a little slowed down with the pandemic, but it was because we were coming out with it in February, March. So now we are coming out with it probably in a few months from now. We'll see.
Very good.
Because Swarovski makes real jewelry with lab-grown diamonds, which are sustainable diamonds, so you don't hurt the nature, you don't pollute mines and stuff like that. That was the idea, to have a sustainable collection. So that's it. And in my book you will see a few things, and all the links of my cufflinks are always with the Knot of Savoy, because the gift of a cufflink to a man is a gift of love. So you have the knot of true love in between.
Listen, it's a good thing I'm not wearing shirts with French cuffs these days. Otherwise, I'd lose my mind selecting cufflinks from your collection, because they are just... I'd also go broke, actually, because I don't know which ones I would select. There's just too many there. I would have to imagine, though, people still have occasions to dress up, and people still want to dress up, even though we don't have as many gatherings at the moment, given the pandemic. I mean, weddings are still happening and other types of occasions, just on a smaller scale.
Mm. Yes, true, but it's very small scale and not as dressy now.
You think that's going to change?
I hope. I mean, I did see a downward trend in the last 20 years where people dress less and less and less. I mean, you never see men wearing ties anymore, or very, very few. And, you go to a bank, for instance. I mean, in the old days, you wouldn't think of not wearing a tie when you worked in a bank. But nowadays, you see bankers wearing perfectly nice suits and a white shirt and the white handkerchief on the side, and without a tie. And you know what? I got used to it. I think it looks good. And I even find that ties look dated nowadays.
Really?
I'm more comfortable wearing a very nice suit, a very nice skirt, and a nice handkerchief open with like that than with a tie. A tie makes you look old for some reason. I think as things evolve, fashion evolves.
Yeah, you know what I think looks actually very sharp, though, is that if you're wearing a V-neck sweater and you have a tie with a V-neck sweater, I think that can look very collegiate.
Yes, also. Yeah.
I think it can look very fresh, actually.
But when I was in my 20s, for instance, and I was in law school, I wore a tie every day of the week. Every day of the week. When I went out, even in nightclubs, you wouldn't think of anything else than not wearing a tie.
Were you alone, or did other guys wear ties?
No, everybody. No. We went in groups with my brothers and my cousins and friends. We went to, there were wonderful nightclubs in Paris in those days, but every man there wore a nice suit and tie, or blazer and tie.
Yeah. Well, I think people have gotten super sloppy, and that's one of my big pet peeves these days. Well, just going back to elegance, two women that I just want to highlight here in the time that we have remaining. And the first is Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Paris, Isabelle d'Orléans Braganza, who was your godmother. And
godmother.
I'd love you to share a little bit about her and her generosity and her great beauty as well.
So she was a cousin of my grandparents, and she was known as the Countess of Paris. She would have been the Queen of France if France was still a monarchy. She had 11 children, and she was, one of the three most beautiful women on earth at the time. I mean, her beauty was, even in her 80s, she was still, I mean, unbelievable. And she was elegance and dignity personified. I mean, she entered the room and the room lit up. She had the most amazing blue eyes. And she had the most fantastic sense of humor. And she was an incredible sportswoman. I mean, even when she was pregnant, 7 months pregnant, she would go fox hunting, side saddle, mounting her horse, all dressed up. She was one of the great clients of Dior and Balmain. I mean, she was really amazing. And we used to go and spend the summer with her in her castle in the north of France. Not the whole summer, but let's say 2 weeks every year. And we were normally never less than 30 people there, because she had 11 children and 36 grandchildren. So you can imagine, and plus all the nephews and godchildren. So you can imagine the quantity of people there. And it was so much fun. And all we did was to play and to go swimming in the sea. I mean, and the North Sea in France is very cold. And sometimes it was, the water would be at 65 degrees. She would jump in it as if nothing. And she adored naughty children. So we would play pranks endlessly. I mean, and you can't tell you the things we did. And she loved it. And she loved naughty children. But there was one condition: you had to have impeccable manners. That was, she would never accept rudeness. So you couldn't say, bad words. When she walked in the room, you were expected to stand up. The boys always kissed her hands. The daughters and granddaughters always curtsied to her. But there was nothing formal. It was just a friendly, happy way of showing respect and love to her. And she, in return, always did that. And there was a funny thing that she always did to everybody when she gave us a kiss at night. She would do the sign of the cross on the front, and she would always say, "God bless you," with a big, big, big smile like that. And I saw her all the time until her death, literally. And it was very funny. The last time I saw her was in 1997 at my grandmother's birthday. And there was a reception with my father afterwards, and then so she left. And I had this urge to go with her and to accompany her to her car. And we chatted, because I had this feeling it was the last time I was going to see her. And we said goodbye. She did the sign of the cross on my forehead, and I did it on hers. And I said to her, "God bless you, Aunt Belle. I love you very much." And she stared at me a bit like that. And she said, I love you very much also, and you have to take care of yourself. And I think she knew it was the last time, because she was psychic. We did seances. We used to go ghost hunting in the castle sometimes during the full moon and things like that. And I felt it, she felt it, and we never saw each other. We always wrote afterwards for Christmas, and she died 2 or 3 years later.
What a beautiful memory. Truly,
yeah.
truly. Well, just in the interest of time, there's one other woman that I want to have you highlight, and that's, of course, your extraordinary mother. And there's and I want to say she is so elegant, and there's such a lovely picture, a photograph of her in there with the Harry Winston jewels in her hair. And I'd love you to talk about that.
It was a story that Harry Winston did for Vogue, for French Vogue. French Vogue did a story about Winston, and so they asked if my mother would have a big hairdo like one did in the 60s, in which they pinned all sorts of diamonds and rings and earrings and little brooches and stuff, which was, it's a fun thing. Yeah, I remember going to Winston, not that day, but before, when they were preparing, they were organizing it. And I was fascinated, and the manager there was very nice, and he explained to me, I remember that day, the difference between the three types of sapphires in the world, Burmese, Ceylon, and Kashmir. So I tell about it. But yes, my mother is very elegant. I remember always admiring her as a child. And whenever there was a party, I think she was always the one who looked the best, because she had this marvelous way of walking, of, her attitude, physical, how do you call it?
Her demeanor.
Her demeanor, yeah, was always so elegant and always, nice and friendly with everybody. And she was also very, very brave as a child during the war. I tell the story on the book of the 40 orphans that she adopted when she was 11 years old. Her parents said that, there were all these orphans in the streets of Rome and in orphanages who were victims of the bombings. And that was in 44, 45 or something. And they wanted to adopt them. And they said to my mother, we would like you to adopt them. My mother said, yes, absolutely. So she went to visit the orphanage. And she told me that she nearly fainted because every single kid was mutilated. One had one leg, another one had one arm, other ones were blind and stuff like that. And there was a heartbreaking story that you have to read in the book because it's too long to tell, and I'm going to start crying anyway because every time I cry. But you will read it in the book, and it's absolutely amazing, and what she did. And all along the book, I tell stories like that of what the amazing things all these ladies did. Like when my great-grandmother saved the life of Einstein, when another great aunt saved the life of Sigmund Freud from Nazi persecutions. I mean, there's one story after the next because, the way royalty were educated in those days is that royalty are not celebrities. They are role models, and that's what they have to do. They're paid for that because they are the figurehead of a country. They are role models. So you will see through all the stories I tell that every single one of them was an amazing role model in her own country.
Well, that was one of the things that I loved about the book, that it's not only showcasing gorgeous jewels, but you have some really remarkable photographs in there as well. And it's all the stories. And for any lover of history, they're going to love the book because, I mean, I do love history, and that's why one of the reasons why the book really resonated with me. In just the moment or two that we have left, Dimitri, I do want to give a shout out, though, to your designs and your pieces that you did feature in the book as well. So congratulations on them. There were a pair of cameo earrings in there. And cameos for me are, and I don't even know what the right word is, they're very raw. There's something very visceral about cameos. And I'm wondering if you have the same sense, because you incorporated them in such a way that they're very historic still, but they're also very modern and fresh.
Yes, these were cameos that belonged to a friend of mine. And actually there's one cameo only. The rest of them are Roman intaglios, it's called. And it's the Roman glass where they engraved in it, a mythological figure. And she had that in a drawer or something. She said, what can I do with all this? And she said, those were bought in Rome in the early 50s when my mother and my father were on their honeymoon. So I said, well, let's make a pair of earrings. And the pair of earrings is like you see it. What you don't see is the back of them, because on the back I engraved 3 gods and 3 goddesses of the Roman mythology.
I know you have a great interest in mythology yourself. Was that why you did it?
Yes, I was obsessed with mythology as a child. From the age of 8 to 12, I think I read everything. Mm-hmm. From the Odyssey to Homer to Rome, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and then I moved on to Egyptian things. Yeah, I love all that. I love antiquities. I think it was so fascinating.
And I like how you did that, actually, that you did it on the backside, because it means it's very personal to the wearer. In other words, not everybody else will know that they're there.
Everything is personal. I always engrave something in the back. Actually, the cover lot of the book, which is a branch of a paisley branch, I engraved on it all religions, arts, and sciences are branches of the same tree, Albert Einstein.
Yes.
And
Yes.
he said that, and it's perfectly, and it's so appropriate because one of my great-grandmothers saved his life. So it's a little homage I gave to him and to my great-grandmother by engraving it on one of my favorite pieces of jewelry.
And you have the story in the book.
The story is in the book, yes. The photo of the brooch on the cover, I photographed the back so you can see the engraving inscribed on it.
Fabulous. Well, listen, Dimitri, this has been such an absolute pleasure. As soon as the book came out, or as it was coming out, you told me about the book, I think a couple years ago, that you were putting it together. I thought, my gosh, I can't wait to see it. It's got to be a gargantuan task to put it together because there was just so much material, but you did it. And really, we just want to congratulate you for doing it. We want to congratulate you on all of your fabulous pieces that are in there. And we want to thank you for joining us here once again on the One Way Ticket Show. We look forward to having you back for a third time. And once again, keep creating and stay well.
Thank you so much. You too, and I hope to see you very soon.
I'll see you soon. Take care. All right. Once again, the book is Once Upon a Diamond. It's published by Rizzoli, and we'll have a link to Prince Dimitri and Once Upon a Diamond on the show notes page of this episode on our website, theonewayticketshow.com. And once again, this episode has been very proudly brought to you by our good friends over at Travel Wi-Fi, makers of the pocket-sized mobile device known as the Teppy. You just stick in your pocket or bag for secure Wi-Fi anywhere in more than 130 countries worldwide. Do visit travelwifi.com to learn more, or we'll have a link to Travel Wi-Fi on the homepage of our website and the show notes page of this episode. And if you use the promo code OneWayTicket, you get 15% off rentals or purchase of a Teppy. And no matter where you are in the world, do shoot me an email, Stephen@theonewayticketshow.com. Once again, Stephen@theonewayticketshow.com, and Stephen is spelled with a V. Share your one-way ticket destination, and let's even arrange a call-in chat because I'm always up for a great conversation. Meantime, it's a wrap for this edition of the One Way Ticket Show. For Prince Dimitri and the entire crew, I'm Stephen Shalowitz, and we'll see you next time.